Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello dear friends, welcome back to Spiritism and the media here on Kardec Radio. Today I'm bringing again the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. As I told last week, this book brings the second part of this book brings communications that Allan Kardec got with discarnate spirits, and we have many different categories of spirits. We have the happy one, we have suffering spirits, we have suicide spirits, for example. And the reason that I brought this last week and bringing it this week again is because we can learn a lot with those communications. It's very good for us to see how they feel, where they are, why they are in the place they are, and to see that what led them to that situation. And many of them, they bring to us some teachings and some tips for us to avoid the situation if it is a bad one, or how to can actually go to a good place if it is one of those happy spirits, for example. And today, the story that I'm bringing, the spirit that I'm bringing, is in the category of the hardened spirits. It's on the part 2, chapter 7 of the book Heaven and Hell. And so it's a bored spirit, Bordeaux 1862. So I read a part of the communication from this spirit, and then the guide, the medium guide, what they bring to us, like explaining the situation. So we have here, the spirit presented itself spontaneously to the medium demanding prayers. What has led you to demand our prayers? I'm tired of wandering around aimlessly. Have you been in such a situation for a long time? About 180 years. What did you used to do on earth? Nothing good. So here we are seeing that this spirit had been wandering around for 180 years, just wandering around doing nothing good, nothing bad. And he said that while here on earth he wasn't doing anything at all, nothing good at all. So he doesn't tell if he was doing something bad to others, but he wasn't doing good. And he stays in this position, the spirit realm, where he is just wandering. And they say, what is your status among other spirits? He says, I am among the bored ones. But what does not comprise a category in and of itself? And he says, among us, everything comprises a category. Every sensations find it similar, and sympathetic counterparts band together. And here, let's think a little bit about that. How much time we spend when we are talking about media, just wandering there, going, for example, from one channel to the other and not watching nothing at all. Or many times you can see yourselves watching some can be movies, can be TV shows, anything that is not bringing something useful to us. And we may spend many hours, many days in that situations, or just online, for example, going from one web page to the other on social media, just going and seeing other people's status without that bringing anything to us. So many times we are already here on earth in that situation, as this spirit is a bored spirit. We are bored ourselves, and many times we don't notice that because we can spend much time going around. It may feel for us that we are doing something. For example, if I just get my cell phone here and start going through the feeds on the social media, it may feel for me that I'm doing something actually, but I may be just bored, just watching around without getting anything at all. I'm not saying that all the time that we spend on social media, on TV, on the internet, on the any other place is a time that we spend in the wrong way. No, it's not what I'm saying here, but I'm just giving us an alert for us to watch ourselves while we are not only those situations, it's because we are talking about media, but it can be any other situation here in our life. How many times we are just bored and we are just going from one place to the other without actually seeing or feeling or getting anything useful to us. And they go on here and say, since you were not condemned to suffering, why have you remained for so long without progressing? I have been condemned to idleness, which among us is suffering. Anything that is not a joy is suffering. So he's not suffering as the spirit that we saw last week, but he's suffering because he is in idleness, an idleness situation. He is in a situation that he does not progress, he does not go anywhere. So have you been forced to remain errant against your will? There are causes too subtle for your mature intelligence. Try to explain them to me. It will be a beginning for you to become useful. So that's true. Just by sharing this experience to us, he is being useful. He said he didn't do anything good, but he's doing something good at that exactly moment when he's talking to Kardec and his team. So he says, since I have no terms for comparison, I couldn't do. An extinguished life on earth bequeaths to the spirit who has not profited from it, what fire bequeaths to paper that it has consumed. Sparks which recall what the still compacted ashes used to be and where they came from, that is, the destructions of the paper. These sparks are the remembrance of the earthly ties that bind the spirit until it has dispersed the ashes of its body. Only then does the spirit regain itself as an ethereal essence and desire to begin progressing once again. I'm going to read one more question that they asked them. What might have caused the boredom you complain about? That's a good one for all of us. For us to ask ourselves, what causes the boredom that we many times complain about? The consequence of my existence. Boredom is the child of idleness. I didn't know how to employ the lengthy years I spent on earth, and the consequences have been reflected in this world. So let's again think about how we spend our life here on earth, how we spend this existence. Are we doing something good to ourselves, to others? Are we progressing? Are we learning? Are we going forward? That's a good question for us, and we are the only ones who know the answer. So it's not about judging others, but looking to ourselves. And I'll read here very quickly the Medium's Guide. The Medium's Guide says, it is mental effort which tires him and which obliges us to help him so that he can respond to your questions. He is as idle in the spirit world as he was on earth. We brought him to you in order to attempt to pull him out of his apathy and boredom, which is true suffering and sometimes more painful than acute pain would be because it can prolong itself indefinitely. Can you imagine the torment of the perspective of endless boredom? Most of the spirits of this category look for an earthly existence only as a pastime and as a means to break the unbearable monotony of their spirit life. That is why they frequently enter their earthly lives without any definite resolution to foster the good, and this in turn obligates them to start all over until finally true progress is felt. So that's a question that we need to ask ourselves, because we may be in that situation without even knowing that, without realizing that. So let's ask ourselves if we are bored, why we are bored, and many times we have some situations in our life when we find ourselves in that way. So let's think about that, especially again as this studies Spiritism and the media, especially when we are talking about media. And I will open here randomly again the book Happy Life by Joana de Angelis, channeled by Divaldo Franco. So we have today the lesson number 45. 45. The body requires care to stay healthy. Neglect under any pretense constitutes an act of rebellion against God, who has given the body as a vehicle for inner growth and moral elevation. Abstain from paying way too much attention to it, as is the case with many people, but preserve, protect, and love it to extend its useful existence. St. Francis of Assisi referred to the body as brother donkey, for it carries our soul while on the earth. As such, it deserves tender love and care. Thank you so much for your company. May God be with all of us. See you next week.